Hey everybody, I'm Scott Butterworth here with GameSpot.com. The PlayStation meeting was earlier today where they finally unveiled the PlayStation Neo, told us it's actually called the PlayStation Pro. So we have our technology editor, Jimmy Thang, here to talk about some of the specs, walk us through what this is going to mean, and really we're going to kind of figure out if the console is going to be worth it for all you people out there. So, hey Jimmy, how's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, so, as you mentioned, Sony, unveiled the PS4 Pro, previously known as the PlayStation Neo.
Yeah, we're going to have to get used to saying Pro now.
Right, and on the stage, they mentioned that it was 2 times as powerful as the PS4, but we finally have some concrete tech specs. I just wanted to walk you through them.
Sure.
We're still using a AMD system on a chip, SoC. It's x86, so it's the same kind of CPU architecture that you kind of have in a typical PC. On stage, they didn't mention teraflops, but we do have them. It's 4.2 teraflops.
How does that compare to, are you going to get into the Scorpio? That's the big question.
Less than Project Scorpio's 6 teraflops.
Gotcha.
It's based off of AMD's Polaris GPU architecture, which is the same GPU architecture that's used in AMD's recently released RX 480 graphics card. And it shares a lot of similarities to that card too, because it also has the same amount of VRAM, video RAM, and that's 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory.
Gotcha.
And so if we're using the RX 480 as sort of a point of comparison, I know we kind of talked off camera about like what does that mean?
Yeah, just for a frame of reference, like if this was a gaming PC, what would these specs, like where would it kind of land on the spectrum?
So as far as I can tell, the closest thing in the PC space is the RX 480, and that is generally seen as a card that's like really good for 1080p gaming. It can do a decent job handling 1440p, which many refer to as 2K. As for 4K, however, it's not really known as a 4K capable video card, but it can do 4K to on some like lesser taxing games.
Interesting. It's really interesting to hear you say that it's not super built for 4K, because obviously Sony was really pushing that during the presentation and talking about the glory of 4K and like the depth of color of HDR. So what is this actually going to mean then? Will this not be for people out there who actually own 4K televisions, is this going to perform the way they're hoping or expecting it will?
So, the PS4 Pro can do 4K, but Sony isn't mandating all game developers to push 4K. So that is an important distinction to make. It's sort of a kind of a wait and see as to which games will support 4K. We do have a small list. I do know that For Honor, Deus Ex, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Watch Dogs 2, and Killing Floor will support 4K.
Gotcha. But this is purely a developer decision. This isn't going to be like all games going forward. It's just going to be, these certain select titles are going to, developers will decide for themselves if they're going to implement this, because it sounds like it's a pretty demanding process. I mean, this is not going to be something that's super simple or easy for developers to implement, right?
Yeah, frankly, I was really surprised that they were going to actually, allow for native 4K support. It's 2160p. That's the resolution. That's actually 4 times as sharp and 4 times as demanding as 1080p, but only 2 times as powerful. So I was a little surprised by that. So while not all games will support 4K, many more games will support HDR, which stands for High Dynamic Range. And you will need a TV that supports HDR, but what this allows for is basically more vibrant colors and like richer blacks. The blacks will look blacker. This is very noticeable, and obviously you will need a HDR TV for it. But beyond that, it will actually help out. The PS4 Pro will actually bolster like 1080p gaming as well.
Okay, so even if you don't own a 4K television, if you don't own like the top of the line high def TV, the Pro will actually still help you, or will improve display.
Yeah, so Sony gave 2 examples of it bolstering like just regular TVs, or maybe just like one and then PSVR example. So the first one is them showing off Farpoint, which is PSVR title, and that one is going to just basically get better graphics, improved fidelity. So they're going to use the processing power that way.
Gotcha.
The other one was Shadow of Mordor, was shown off using SSAA, which is super sampling anti-aliasing. What that does is it renders the image higher than 1080p, and then it downsizes it to your 1080p TV.
Gotcha.
So it basically looks sharper. It's not as sharp as 4K, but it is noticeably sharper.
Gotcha. One really interesting thing about the specs that I noticed is there isn't actually a physical 4K Blu-ray player. It's just the standard Blu-ray player. Is that correct? And why would Sony make that decision? If
Yes,
so,
they didn't mention that during the press conference, so I just kind of assumed that, of course it has. And then later we found out that it actually doesn't, which is very surprising because even, Microsoft's Xbox One S supports it. So yeah, I think that was probably a cost-saving measure, but it is kind of strange for Sony to push this as like a 4K, HDR player, but it doesn't have the actual physical drive. I mean, you can, run Netflix movies and things like that.
Yeah, I suppose that would sort of be the counter argument to this, right? So the PlayStation Pro only costs $400, which is actually a very reasonable price point. It's only $100 more than the standard PS4. And yeah, they were pushing, like, they mentioned that Netflix, there's going to be 600 hours worth of 4K content available by the end of the year. So if you're just treating it as a digital box, the lack of a physical media player actually doesn't really matter. So I mean, I don't know if that really excuses the absence of a 4K Blu-ray player, but I mean, at least you're not totally stranded. You have options.
Right. They also mentioned some other specs. We know the hard drive size. It's going to be 1 terabyte. I was hoping for an SSD, but that's kind of wishful thinking because SSDs are pretty expensive. It's probably a 5,400 RPM drive, and I was hoping for 7,200 RPM, but it is, again, cheaper. We did get the dimensions as well. It's kind of large. It looks
it's like a beefy box. It's a pretty substantial piece of hardware.
So when I saw, I think it was Andrew House was holding it at the end, I wasn't sure if the box was big or if he's just a really small man. But the dimensions are 11.6 by 2.1 by 12 inches. So it is pretty sizable.
Yeah, and I think you said it weighs like, what, 7 pounds?
7.2 pounds. So
which is quite a bit more than the PS4.
Right.
But in a way that makes sense because, I mean, it's housing some more substantial hardware than the traditional PS4.
Sure.
So it might be too early to say. I mean, there's still more that we need to learn about this, but based on what we know so far, do you think that the PlayStation Pro justifies the price? Do you think it's worth the $400 price tag?
That's a good question. I do think that it is priced fairly, and I think if you don't own a PlayStation 4 and you've been waiting for a reason, I think this is a good reason. And then if you have a PS4, I would say unless you have a 4K HDR TV, I would hold out.
Gotcha.
And of course, you can expect more coverage from it as we get it in as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get a full breakdown comparison of the Pro versus the Scorpio and all kinds of fun hardware stuff. So yeah, stay tuned to GameSpot.com for more hardware coverage from Jimmy Thang and more on basically everything, GameSpot.com.